April is officially over, so you already know what this video is about. I have to admit, at the beginning of April, I did not have a lot of expectations. I was actually pretty sure that I was only going to read like 4 or 5 books this month. It was probably going to be like my worst month. But thankfully by like the middle of April, everything started to kind of pick up again, and I stopped being so deep into like the slump that I was getting into. So thankfully I was able to finish, I think, about 12 books, and I ended up having a really fun and interesting reading month. So I'm really excited to talk about these books with you all. Let's jump right on into them. So the first book that I read in the month of April was actually one that I absolutely 100% needed to read this month, and that was Heartstopper Volume 1 by Alice Oseman. And of course I had to read this book because the Netflix adaptation came out this month, and I love it. I love it so much. I've already rewatched it like twice. It's so good. And this is actually the first time I've ever read this graphic novel, and I'm starting to feel a lot more comfortable and confident with graphic novels. So I was so glad when I started Heartstopper, and I ended up loving it. It's very cute, very fluffy, it's set in high school. It's about this boy named Charlie, and he is 15 years old, and he is one of the few boys at his school that is openly gay. And at the start of the new term, he ends up becoming seatmates with this boy named Nick, who's the year older than him, and they kind of start off this friendship, and it's really adorable. And overall, it's just really cute. I feel like there's not so much to say about this book because it really is just straightforward, like a high school contemporary romance graphic novel. You kind of get the gist. It's pretty self-explanatory. I ended up giving that book a 5 out of 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. I am actually like in the middle of volume 2. I just kind of put it down for a little bit because I kind of forgot about it, honestly, and I got so much more sidetracked by the adaptation that it just like, I kind of forgot to just finish volume 2. The next book that I read is actually one that I think put me in a slump, and that is I Love You Mochi by Sarah Kuhn. And I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. It was okay. It was cute. It was fluffy. It was fine. It's another like high school contemporary romance, but this time the main character, she's like really into fashion, but her mom is an artist, and her mom is always like wanted her daughter to become an artist as well, but that just doesn't seem like the right route for her. So she is really into fashion. She really wants to like do that instead of art. Doesn't know how to tell her mom, but then her mom kind of finds out anyway that she dropped out of art school, or like doesn't want to go to art school anymore. So she ends up visiting her grandparents in Japan over spring break just to kind of get some distance between her and her mom. She ends up meeting this boy there, and romance ensues. So it was a really cute book, but unfortunately it just was kind of meh for me. It was a little difficult to like push myself through this book after a while. It kind of just felt very stagnant. I don't know what it was about the book, but it just didn't feel like the narrative was really like taking anything anywhere. So for me, it just didn't work out, unfortunately. I did really want to like it, and I was pretty engaged at the beginning of the book, so I had some high hopes, but then by the end I was just kind of like, I really don't care. I'm also not the biggest fan of the cover. I think the cover kind of ruins it a little bit. I think the cover is just like not it at all. It's just, I don't like it. I don't vibe with it. It needs a different cover. I've always been a cover girly. I've always been the type of person who like will buy a book based on the cover. That's just who I am. I'm not ashamed. And then I ended up reading every single Addie book from the like American Girl doll collection. I was really excited to read all of her books because when I was growing up as a kid, I never really got new books. I was always given hand-me-down books. Like, I remember when I was probably about like 6 or 7 years old, I got this entire box filled with hand-me-down books from my mom's boss's daughters, who were a couple years older than me, and it was filled with just like a lot of Goosebumps books, a lot of like the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books, and also some American Girl doll books. And unfortunately, the only ones that were in there were like a couple of Kirstens and a couple of Samantha's. So growing up, the only American Girl doll books that I had were Kirsten's and Samantha's. But now that I'm older and I have more access to these books, I really want to get into all of like the girl series that I didn't get to when I was younger. So Addie was definitely the first one on the list that I wanted to read, and I'm so glad that I finally read her entire series. It just broke me. It left me in tears. Like every single book made me cry, and it was just so beautiful and so heartbreaking. And oh my gosh, I would have loved these books though when I was a kid. I really wish that I'd had them. I would have like been obsessed with Addie, but unfortunately I only had hand-me-down books as a kid. I think I had a total of like 3 brand new books, or like even like books that we bought. I did not get books as a kid. So I read, these are all out of order. I read Meet Addie, Addie Learns a Lesson, Addie Saves the Day, Changes for Addie, Addie's Surprise, and then also Happy Birthday Addie. So those are all the books. I think that's out of order though. But yeah, I read all 6 books. So yeah, I read all 6 books from her collection, and I don't know who I'm gonna read next. I've been going back and forth if I want to do Kaya or Felicity or Josefina or whoever. Like, I'm down for anything. I just need to figure out the order that I'm gonna read them in. Thankfully, Hoopla has them all condensed into one audiobook, so you have like 6 or 7 books in one audiobook, and it's only like 5 or 6 hours, so they're pretty easy to get through. The next book I read, I just noticed, is the only book that I own physically that I read this month, which is a total bummer. I've really been trying to read more of the books that I own, but I guess I just didn't really prioritize that this month, which is unfortunate. So I ended up loving this book, and that is Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. I am obsessed with this book. We're also kind of similar color schemes going on here, but I loved it. One of the best YA fantasies that I've ever read. This one just takes the flippin' cake. I loved it. It was so iconic. I think something that I loved the most about this book that I kept like pointing out throughout the entirety of like while I was reading it was the unique narrative style where the main character is like telling this story, but she'll like break the fourth wall every once in a while. It's very like conversational and casual, but also like really beautifully done, and I just loved it. I feel like nobody else could have done this like interesting kind of narrative style besides Margaret Owen and like done it just as well. And I love the main character. She was so relatable. There were like moments, especially towards the end, where I was like in tears. It was beautiful. And I also really loved like all of the romance in this book. Like, I didn't kind of go into it thinking that there would be a lot of romance, but there was, and I was really happy for that. I love the relationship between the main character and her love interest. I thought that was really interesting. I would love to kind of go back through it and like reread it and like tab it up and write, you know, underline a bunch of lines, because there were so many lines in this book, especially between the main character and her love interest, where I was like, I really wish I had a pen right now so I could like underline this and make little notes and everything, but I didn't do that this time around. Maybe on a reread I'll do it. And then I also loved that there was like a sapphic romance in this book. It was so cute. It was so well done. And I don't know, I just loved it. And there's like some like kind of curvy girl representation. I don't know if I want to call it like fat representation. I think that the character might be fat, but it's kind of difficult, especially within the narrative, specifically since it's like a side character and not a main character. It's kind of difficult to say. And I think that there was also some kind of like ace/arrow spectrum representation going on, specifically with the main character and her love interest. I don't want to totally speak on that though, because I'm not 100% sure, but it kind of gave me the vibes. So yeah, this was a really great YA fantasy. It gave me very much like fairy tale vibes. So if you're looking for that kind of book, this one's perfect. It has such a great narrative style. The main character's amazing. I love everything about it. 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is one that I've been wanting to read for a while, and that is You Exist Too Much by Zaina Arafat. And I loved this book so much. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. This is basically a literary fiction novel that follows this Palestinian American woman. I was about to call her a girl, but she's like in her 20s. She is a woman, and it's very much like Luster, Sally Rooney, that kind of vibe, and I really loved it. The narrative style in this one was also really interesting because like the timeline kind of jumps around, and you get to see the main character in a lot of different kind of settings and scenarios. There's also parts of this book where she is like in a group therapy situation, and there's also a lot of talk of eating disorders, so if that is possibly a trigger for you, you might want to stay away from this book. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I thought the writing was really nice. I liked the main character. She was super interesting. And I really liked the relationship that she had with her mom. It was definitely very strained, very nuanced. And of course, I love a good family dynamic. So I really liked this book. I highly recommend it. And I'm so glad that I finally was able to get to it. The next book that I read was kind of a little bit of a disappointment. Like, I still really enjoyed it, but also it just like wasn't exactly what I wanted. And that is One Italian Summer by Rebecca Searle. I think that's how you pronounce her name. I really like the vibes of this book. I love the setting, I love the feeling, I love the fact that like you're reading this book and you feel like you're being transported to this tiny Italian town, and it's just like gorgeous and fun, very Mamma Mia vibes. Even though Mamma Mia is Greece, this is Italy, same kind of vibes, I guess. That probably doesn't make any sense, but it's like very summery, and like Mamma Mia is summer to me, and One Italian Summer is also very summer, so it kind of makes sense. But I feel like there were a lot of elements of this book that I felt could have been cut out completely and were just unnecessary. Like, I really wish that either this had been kind of like a second chance romance book where the main character, instead of cheating on her husband, was like relearning her husband and like re-falling in love with him. I felt like that would have been a bit more impactful instead of like the whole cheating narrative. I feel like there's only a fraction of a time where the cheating narrative works, and it's rare. It's not like very often, and this definitely didn't work in this specific context for me. I think that the cheating narrative was supposed to kind of mirror her mom's experience in Italy, but I just didn't feel like it was very well done. I didn't think it was super effective, so I definitely felt like that was something that could have been tossed out the window. I would have loved a more second chance romance feel, because I mean, they kind of ended up doing that anyway in the last like 10% of the book, so they might as well have made it the entire book. But I did really like that it had sort of like a fantasy element with the time travel in this book. That was definitely not something that I was expecting, but it was so much fun. I really love like these parallel timelines of like they finally, you know, converge together. I thought that was so interesting, so I really liked that. There's a lot of things I really like about this book, and then there were other things that I just didn't love about it either. And then the last book that I read is probably tied for favorite book of the month along with Little Thieves, and that is By the Book by Jasmine Guillory, and this is part of like a series of books that are based on Disney movies but are like contemporary romances. The first book in this series is If the Shoe Fits by Julie Murphy. I read that last year and I absolutely loved it, and this time around it's By the Book, and it is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and I absolutely loved it so much. I think something that made me truly fall in love with this book is the fact that it's set in Santa Barbara, and like you actually kind of get to like interact with Santa Barbara in this book. I was worried because it's like a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so I was like, are they going to keep her locked up in this mansion like the entire time? But thankfully she wasn't. She got to like go out and go surfing and go get ice cream and go like to the bookstore, and I was like, I know that place, I know that place. Even though it wasn't like necessarily named in the book, it was like vague but specific enough that I was like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. I was complaining a little bit on Twitter about like it wasn't totally accurate to Santa Barbara, but I give it a slide. It's totally fine. I still had a fun time reading it, and it's like I don't really get to read a lot of books that are set in Santa Barbara, so regardless of accuracy, it's just really fun to see it in like a fictional kind of book, and it's just, I don't know, I loved it so much. And I really love the romance in this book. I thought it was really, really well done. Fairy tale retellings in general can be pretty hit or miss for me, but thankfully this one was like a direct hit. It was perfect. It made me want to read all of Jasmine Guillory's books because I think I'll really like them. This one definitely drew me in though, specifically because it's about publishing. The main character is in publishing. She's like an assistant, I believe, and she's also in her mid-20s, which, you know, relatable. And I just love that. I don't know. And I love the love interest. I thought he was a really great sort of like beast character. I love their dynamic. I love how feisty she was and how like she was willing to stand up for herself, and like that's very Belle to me, because like Belle's never been the type to like be like, oh, shy, I can't, you know, I can't defend myself. Like, no, Belle is out here always defending herself, and I love that about her. It's why she's my favorite princess. And I don't know, I loved it. I thought it was so good and so beautiful and so much fun. And if you're looking for like a really fun, fluffy, cute romance book, this one's definitely for you. I will say, I think that this is just part of the series, that neither of the books in this series have sex. I believe that at least in this book, it's kind of mentioned or kind of like alluded to, but there's no like explicit mentions of sex or anything like that. So just be aware of that. I know that a lot of people want like spice in their books, and I totally understand that. That is like totally valid. But yeah, none of the books in this series have any sort of spice in them. So yeah, those were all of the books that I read in the month of April, all 12 of them. I had a really interesting reading month. I think I knocked it out of the park pretty well. Like, there were 2 5-star books, there were 2 3-star books, 1 4-star. No wait, there was 3 5 stars because I always forget about Heartstopper. That one was also 5 stars. So we have 3 5 stars, 1 4-star. I can't count. 1 4-star, 2 3 stars, and then I didn't rate any of the Addie books because I just felt like that wasn't necessarily fair. I mean, they all would have gotten like 5 stars from me. Like in the reviews, I was like, this is a 5 out of 5 in my heart. So yeah, I had a really great reading month. I'm so glad that I got to share all of the books that I read with you in the month of I read with you. I didn't read them with you. I think that made sense. Maybe it didn't, but you know what I mean. I just had a great time sharing these books with you all, and I hope you all enjoyed this video. And if you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, Storygraph, TikTok. All of the links are going to be down below, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye! Ooh, I thought it'd be me and you.